Hi guys, today we're going to create a really fun pendant using some stamps from ImpressArt. And this is the pendant that we're going to create, okay, just to kind of show you where we're going. You're going to need a couple of things to create this pendant. You're obviously going to need a blank. I'm using a 25mm round blank for this project. You're also going to need a block to use to lay your blank on and do your stamping. And you're also going to need a metal stamping hammer. Okay. You're also going to need some stamps, of course. So we're going to use some of the mandala stamps from ImpressArt. There are 4 different ones in the package and they come in 3 different sizes. And we're also using a lotus stamp that also comes from ImpressArt as well. And I'm going to use a Sharpie marker to mark off a grid. And then at the end, we're going to use a stamp enamel marker. You can also use patina paints to fill in and kind of make the stamps pop on the pendant itself. So let's get started. The first thing you want to do is you want to take your blank. And when I'm doing a round pendant project, especially if I'm using the mandala set and wanting to create a mandala pattern, I like to create a grid on my circle just to kind of help guide me as to where I'm going to place my stamps. You can eyeball this if you want to, but I find that if you mark out a grid, it just makes it easier. So to do that, there's a couple of different things that you can do. You can lay your pendant down flat and then come in with a ruler and just kind of eyeball and decide what exactly is the center and lay your ruler across, giving yourself enough room for the tip of your marker and marking the center line down the center of your pendant, and then picking it back up, laying it the other direction and marking the center point going the other direction, so that what you end up with is a nice grid. Okay, and that's just going to help you kind of work in 4 sections instead of trying to eyeball the whole circle. Okay, another way to do this is you can get online and Google circle grids, and there are a ton of free grids that you can download and then print. And all you would do would be to lay your pendant down in the center, and then you just want to lay your ruler down as your guide for your marker and go ahead and mark the lines that way. With the circle grid, you can go ahead and break this down even more. Instead of cutting it into 4 pieces, you could actually go as far as cutting it into 8ths if you wanted to as well. It's just whatever works for you. Now I'm using a Sharpie marker for this because the Sharpie marker will come off. Okay, don't think that Sharpie, that permanent marker, is stuck there forever, because it's not. Once we get finished making all of our stamps, you can wipe away the Sharpie marker that you've used. All right, so once you have your grid ready to go, I'm just working in a 4-space grid. I'm going to place this onto my block. Okay, now there are a couple of things that you can buy to go with this. There is some specifically designed tape that you can use to tape on your pendant. This is going to help you to mark out letters, or you can use it like I'm going to use it. I'm going to take a little bit of this. I'm going to cut just a small section of this, and I'm going to tape my pendant to my block for the first stamp so that I can really get the center. Okay, so I'm just going to show you what I mean. I've just cut 2 short pieces of the tape. Okay, so now my pendant is not going to move and I can really get centered when I use my lotus stamp. And that's the first stamp we're going to do. We're going to take that lotus stamp and we're going to place it directly where the lines crisscross, which is the center of our pendant. Now, you'll notice on your stamp that there is an ImpressArt and the picture of the stamp itself. You always want this to be facing you to have your stamp going in the right direction. There are going to be times when you want to turn it and have it facing away from you, but to start with, you always want to have that ImpressArt facing you. So when I place the stamp onto the center of the blank, those words are coming towards me. Okay, so let's get this ready to go. Okay, I'm just going to move this to the center, and then I'm going to try to eyeball it as much as I can to get that lotus flower right in the center. Okay, so I'm going to hold that stamp with my left hand, and then I'm going to come in with my right hand and my metal stamping hammer, and I'm going to give this a really good whack, and I'm going to whack it twice. Okay, and then when you lift your stamp up, you've got a beautiful lotus right in the very center of your blank, and that's exactly what you wanted. Okay, now before we move further, let's talk about this tape just a little bit more, because this tape is super cool stuff, and it's going to show you another use for this tape. It's great because it's not sticky and it will not leave any residue on your stamp. But let's say you're using a bar-shaped pendant and you want to stamp a straight line. You want all of your stamps to go in a straight line. You can lay your stamp blank down and then lay your tape down and then mark where you want the edge of your stamp to go. Okay, so a lot of different uses for this tape. It's really, really handy stuff, and like I said, it doesn't leave any residue behind on your blank, which is great. So out of the 4 stamps that are in the packaging, we're going to use the 6mm stamp that looks sort of like a horseshoe, and that's going to be the first stamp that we're going to put in each one of our grids on our blank, other than our lotus. Okay, so to do that, it's important that you're able to spin your blank around, because now we want to turn it so that one of the grids is facing away from us. Okay, so we've basically just turned the lotus on its side just a little bit. Okay, and we're going to take our pendant, our stamp. You want the ImpressArt logo to be facing you, and you want to take your stamp and place it in the center of your grid. Okay, so just that little piece of pie, we want this guy in the very center of that piece of pie, the one that's furthest away from us. Then you're going to come in with your metal stamping hammer and give it 2 good whacks. Okay, so then when you pick it up, you've got a nice little stamp here ready to go. Now you can see where that guy is placed. He was right in the center, and so he's in the center of that little grid. And now we're going to turn and get another little piece of pie, this part of the grid, and we're just going to continue along the exact same way, placing that stamp in the center of that piece of pie and giving it 2 good whacks. Okay, ready? Okay, now we have 2. We're going to turn our pendant just around just a little bit. Same thing. Lifting up, double checking. Okay, and now we're to the last little piece of our pie. All right, so now when we hold it up, we have surrounded our little lotus flower with these cute little horseshoe type shapes. Okay, and they're all pretty evenly spaced. It's not perfect, but that's okay. Even if it's a little off, it's totally fine. Nobody is going to notice, I promise you. It's going to look great in the end. Okay, so now we're ready to add another stamp to our design. So the next stamp that we're going to use is this little 3mm stamp that looks like an hourglass. Okay, now again, same thing. We're going to be working one little section of our grid at a time. So again, I'm turning it so that one of our little horseshoes is facing towards the top. We're going to take this hourglass shape and we're going to place that in the center of our horseshoe. Okay, holding it still, give it 2 good whacks and lift it up. Okay, and now we're ready to turn. Same thing, place that in the center of your little open section of your horseshoe. Turn, same thing. Turning again for the last one. Now you'll notice when I'm using the hammer, I'm using quite a bit of force for this. You want to be sure that you're using a strong, solid movement to hammer down, okay? So now we're building that little pattern even more, just adding even more decoration to it, okay? So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to come in with a third stamp. Now this guy, he kind of reminds me of an umbrella. It's this 4mm stamp here. He comes up and I don't know, it just sort of looks like a little bit of an umbrella to me. So we're going to take the umbrella and we're going to place the umbrella in between, and that's going to go over the lines, our Sharpie mark, okay? So you're going to place this with the ImpressArt facing you, and you just want to place that between your two horseshoes right on one of your lines that you have drawn with your Sharpie marker, okay? And then 2 good whacks. Okay, and then you're going to turn. Same thing, same placement between the 2 horseshoes right on your Sharpie marker line. Okay, turn. We're almost there. And then last one is going right in the center of those last 2 little horseshoes. All right. So now we have a really beautiful pattern that was evenly spaced out thanks to our Sharpie marker grid. And we're ready to add some ink to this to really make that design pop. So you're going to take your stamp enamel marker, and this is exactly what this pen is made to do. Okay, it's full of ink. You can shake it up to make sure that you get it nice and stirred up. And then you just want to take it and look at it. It looks just like a regular Sharpie marker. It's got a nice wide tip on it. And you want to come in and place the marker in all of the indentions where your stamps were. Now, it may be easier if you just color the whole thing, but you want to be sure that you're getting the ink down inside the grooves. That's the most important part. That's what's really going to make this pattern stick out. So if it's easier for you to just kind of color it all in, then go right ahead, but get down inside all the little nooks and crannies in your design. And you can use patina paints for this as well. Okay, you're going to let this dry for about 3 minutes. It doesn't have to be completely dried, but you do want to give it a little bit of time to dry just a little bit. It'll still be a little tacky, and then you can just take a Kleenex or a paper towel or whatever you've got on hand, a soft cloth, to wipe all this off, and the ink will remain in the spaces. We're going to let that dry for just a second, and I'm going to show you one that I used patina paint on. So you can see I added that nice cobalt blue instead of the black marker. With the patina paints, it's the same thing. You just cover the design, making sure to get down in the nooks and crannies, let it dry for a couple of minutes, and then wipe it off, and you've got this really beautiful design where the ink is down inside your stamps. Okay. So after you've let it dry for a little bit, then you're ready to come in and wipe away that surface paint. And you're also going to wipe away your Sharpie marker marks as well. It's going to wipe off and it's going to be nice and clean. And you're really going to be able to see that beautiful stamping pattern that you created on your pendant. So you can see once I have taken all of the surface away, it really makes the stamp pop. So now you're ready to add this to a piece of jewelry. I like to show off my stamps all by themselves, and so a lot of times what I will do is I will just take a jump ring, take a 6mm jump ring, and open it up. The great thing about this blank is that it already has a hole in it ready to add to a jump ring or whatever it is that you're going to use. So I've added a 6mm jump ring here, and I'm just going to add this to a piece of really pretty diamond cut ball chain. And then close that up, and it looks beautiful all on its own. But if you wanted to add an extra little bit of pizzazz to this, you could take some shiny bicones, some of your favorite Jesse James beads. Add those to eye pins, head pins, create some loops, and then attach those using a smaller jump ring as well. And you've got a really beautiful pendant like that. Isn't that pretty? Just that little added sparkle. Okay. Or you can add, this is one of my favorites actually. So I used patina paint on this one and then added one of the little Jesse James beads mini tassels and a bicone in the same color as the patina that I used. Okay. And then with this one, last but not least, I added this one to the fairy silk. I just thought this was the perfect use of the fairy silk, and I added 2 of my favorite Jesse James beads, tied some knots, added my pendant on a jump ring, and you've got a really beautiful statement piece that you created from scratch. Hope you guys have enjoyed today's project, and I will see you again next time.